The Alpha King's Mark. Welcome to the Story King, where every tale leaves you breathless. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because today's story will change everything you thought you knew about Destiny. The snow fell in sheets so thick that Mira couldn't see 3 feet ahead. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she stumbled through the frozen forest, clutching her threadbare cloak against the brutal wind. As the weakest Omega in the Silverpaw pack, she'd been sent on a fool's errand, to gather moonflowers from the northern ridge in the middle of a blizzard. They all knew she wouldn't survive. That was the point. Tears froze on her cheeks as she pushed forward, her bare feet numb against the snow. At least death would be quiet out here. Peaceful. Better than the daily torment of being the pack's punching bag. The orphaned Omega with no one to protect her, no one to care if she simply disappeared. Then she heard it, a cry, faint, impossibly fragile. Mira stopped, her wolf instinct suddenly alert despite her exhaustion. That sound, it was a baby, a newborn, by the weakness of its wail. No, she whispered, her voice snatched away by the wind. Please, no, but her feet were already moving, following that desperate sound. She found the infant in a small clearing, half buried in fresh snow, wrapped in what had once been a white blanket now stained with blood. The baby, a boy, she realized as she knelt, was dying. His lips were blue, his tiny fingers curled and unmoving. Mira didn't think. She couldn't. An Omega's instinct to nurture, to protect, overwhelmed everything else. She scooped the freezing infant against her chest, tucking him inside her cloak, pressing him against her skin to share what little warmth she had left. The moment her bare hand touched his forehead, pain exploded across her neck. Mira screamed, falling to her knees as fire erupted where her neck met her shoulder. It felt like someone had pressed a burning brand against her skin, searing through flesh and bone. The agony was absolute, blinding, and then visions flooded her mind. A magnificent throne room carved from black marble. A man with eyes like molten gold and silver hair, wearing a crown of twisted iron. His face was beautiful and terrible, ancient and young all at once. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. And he was looking directly at her, through space and time, with an expression of shock that mirrored her own. The Alpha King. The vision shattered. Mira gasped, finding herself face down in the snow, the baby still clutched to her chest. Her neck burned with residual pain, and when she touched it with trembling fingers, she felt raised skin, a mark. She'd heard of such things in the old stories, the legends whispered around fires. Soul bonds, made marks, but that was impossible. She was nobody, a worthless Omega, and he was. The baby whimpered, pulling her back to the present crisis. He was warmer now, his color improving, but they'd both freeze if she didn't find shelter. Mira forced herself to stand, cradling the infant, and stumbled deeper into the forest, away from her pack's territory. She couldn't go back. They'd kill the baby, kill her for the presumption of saving him. She found a cave as darkness fell, barely more than a crack in a hillside, but it was shelter. She huddled in the deepest corner, the baby nestled against her, and prayed for morning. Dawn brought the sound of footsteps. Mira's eyes snapped open. Someone was outside the cave. Multiple someones, moving with the silent grace of trained warriors. Her wolf whined in fear. She was too weak to fight, too exhausted to run. Search every cave, a deep voice commanded. The king's orders. Find the Omega and the child. Unharmed. Mira's blood turned to ice. They'd found her. Already. A shadow fell across the cave entrance. A massive man ducked inside, his silver eyes adjusting to the darkness. When he spotted her, his expression shifted from determination to awe. My lady, he breathed, dropping to one knee. I am Darius, first commander of the Royal Guard. His Majesty has sent us to bring you home. Home. Mira's voice cracked. I don't understand. How did you? The moment the bond formed, the king felt it. He's been searching for you his entire life. Darius's weathered face softened. You bear his mark now. You're his destined mate. The future queen. The baby chose that moment to cry, and Darius's eyes widened as he caught the scent. That child, impossible. It bears the bloodline of the Shadow Court. The king's enemies. Mira tightened her grip on the infant. I don't care whose child he is. I won't let anyone hurt him. Darius studied her for a long moment, then nodded with what looked like respect. Then we bring him too. But I warn you, Omega, the king will not be pleased. His war with the Shadow Court has raged for centuries. This child represents everything he's fought against. The journey to the capital took 3 days. They traveled by horseback, Mira cradled in furs with the baby. She'd started calling him Ash in her mind, strapped against her chest. The first commander and his men treated her with a deference that made her deeply uncomfortable. She was used to kicks and curses, not bows and "my lady." The Alpha King's castle rose from the mountains like a crown of black stone and silver towers. As they passed through the gates, wolves lined the courtyard, warriors and nobles, all bowing as she rode past. Their eyes burned with curiosity, some with hostility as they caught the scent of the Shadow Court child. Darius helped her down in the throne room, and Mira's legs nearly gave out. The space was exactly as she'd seen in her vision, all dark marble and soaring columns. And there, on the throne, sat the Alpha King himself. Kael Silverthorn. He was more magnificent in person than any vision could capture. Power rolled off him in waves that made her Omega Wolf whimper and submit. But it was his eyes that held her, molten gold, ancient and fierce, fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. He rose, descending the steps with liquid grace, and the entire room fell silent. When he stood before her, Mira had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. He was easily a foot taller, built like a warrior, dressed in black and silver that matched his hair. "You," he breathed, and his voice resonated through her bones. "After 300 years, you." His hand rose, fingers trembling slightly, the only sign of uncertainty in his powerful frame, and touched her neck where his mark burned. Mira gasped at the electric sensation, at the rightness of his touch. Then Ash whimpered, and Kael's expression went glacial. "What," he said, his voice dropping to a lethal purr, "is that?" "A baby," Mira heard herself say. "I found him dying in the snow. I saved him." "That," Kael bit out, "is a Shadow Court whelp. I can smell their cursed bloodline from here." His gold eyes blazed. "My enemies murdered my parents, my siblings, slaughtered thousands of my people. And you bring their spawn into my home. He's a baby." Mira clutched Ash tighter, her fear transforming into defiance. An innocent child who'd done nothing wrong except be born into the wrong family. The throne room erupted in furious whispers. Darius stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps if we—" "Silence." Kael's command cracked like a whip. He stared at Mira, something dark and dangerous swirling in his eyes. "You're my destined mate. The gods themselves chose you for me. But you ask me to accept the son of my enemies, to raise the bloodline that destroyed my family." Mira's Omega instinct screamed at her to submit, to bare her throat, to beg forgiveness. Instead, she lifted her chin. "If you want me, you accept him. If you can't show mercy to an innocent child, then I don't want you as my mate." The silence was absolute. No one, in 300 years, had dared speak to the Alpha King that way. Kael stared at her for an eternity. Then, slowly, his lips curved into something that might have been a smile or might have been a threat. "Brave little Omega," he murmured, stepping closer until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Do you have any idea what you're asking? The Council will revolt. The Pax will question my strength. My enemies will see it as weakness. Then be strong enough not to care," Mira whispered. "Be the king who breaks the cycle of hatred." Something flickered in Kael's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. His hand rose again, this time cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and despite everything, Mira felt herself leaning into his touch. "You're either very wise or very foolish," he said softly. I haven't decided which. Maybe both, she managed. Kale's laugh was low and rough, like distant thunder. The gods have a cruel sense of humor, giving me a mate with a spine of steel. His expression grew serious. I'll grant you this, little Omega. The child lives, but he stays in the castle, under guard, until I can determine if he's truly innocent or a planted threat. Relief flooded through Mira. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Kale leaned down, his lips brushing her ear, his voice dropping to a possessive growl that made her shiver. You've challenged me in front of my court, championed my enemy's bloodline, and turned my world upside down in less than an hour. Now you'll face the consequences of being my mate, and my queen. Before she could respond, he straightened and addressed the room. This is Mira, bearer of my mark, chosen by the gods themselves. She is your queen. Anyone who challenges her answers to me. The court erupted into chaos. Voices rose in protest, in shock, some in approval. But Kale ignored them all, his eyes never leaving Mira's face. Darius, escort the queen and the child to the royal chambers. Post your best guards. His smile turned predatory. I have a council to educate about the price of disrespecting their future queen. As Darius led her away, Mira looked back to see Kale ascending his throne, power radiating from him like a dark star. He caught her gaze and mouthed three words that sent ice down her spine: "We're not finished." In the royal chambers, a suite of rooms more beautiful than anything she'd ever imagined, Mira finally let herself process what had happened. She was the Alpha King's mate, a queen, and she'd just made an enemy of half his court by saving Ash. She settled the sleeping baby in the ornate crib someone had hastily provided, then moved to the balcony overlooking the city. Somewhere in the castle, Kale was dealing with the fallout of her actions. Part of her wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The door opened behind her. She turned to find Kale standing in the doorway, still wearing his crown, but his expression softer now that they were alone. "Your Majesty," she began. "Kale," he interrupted, stepping onto the balcony. "When we're alone, you call me Kale." He moved beside her, close enough that their arms almost touched. For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching the sun set over the kingdom. "You're afraid of me," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Mira admitted. "You're the most powerful alpha in the world. You could kill me with a thought, but you challenged me anyway. For a child that isn't even yours." Kale turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Do you know how rare that is? True courage, untainted by politics or ambition." His hand found hers on the balcony rail, his fingers intertwining with hers. The bond between them hummed, warm and electric. "I've been alone for 300 years, Kale murmured. "Waiting for you, fighting wars, building this kingdom, all while carrying the hope that somewhere, my mate existed. And now you're here, and you're nothing like I expected." "Disappointed," Mira whispered. "Fascinated." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Terrified." "Grateful. You make me feel things I thought I'd forgotten, little Omega." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the fearsome Alpha King the world saw. This was just Kale, a man who'd been alone for centuries. "The child," Kale said, his voice hardening slightly. "Did you sense anything when you found him? Anything unusual beyond the bond forming?" Mira frowned, thinking back. "He was dying, but when I touched him, it was like something awakened. In him, I mean. For just a moment, I felt," she struggled for words. "Power, ancient and vast, like something sleeping had stirred." Kale's expression grew grave. "That's what I feared. That child isn't just shadow-court bloodline, Mira. He's something more, something that should be impossible." "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, a guard burst onto the balcony, his face pale. "Your Majesty, the Shadow Court, they've breached the northern border. They're demanding we return the child. They say if we refuse, it's war." Kale's eyes flashed gold, his alpha power flooding the space. But his hand never released Mira's. Instead, His grip tightened, protective and possessive. "Let them come," he growled. Then he turned to Mira, his expression fierce. "You asked me to break the cycle of hatred. Instead, little queen, it seems you've started a new war. The Shadow Court doesn't send envoys and make demands unless something of extraordinary value is at stake." Mira's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" Kale looked toward the royal chambers where Ash slept peacefully, unaware of the storm gathering around him. "I'm saying that baby you saved." His voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "He might be the Shadow Court's lost prince, the heir to my greatest enemy's throne. And his parents will burn this entire kingdom to the ground to get him back." That's all for today's chapter. If you're dying to know what happens next, make sure you're subscribed to the Story King and hit that bell icon. Will Mira protect the child who bonded her to the Alpha King? Can Kale choose between his mate and his kingdom? And what dark secrets does baby Ash truly hold? Find out in the next thrilling installment. Until then, keep reading, keep dreaming, and remember, the best stories are the ones that leave you wanting more.